There is a report that was just published today or yesterday from 3 or 4 NGOs which speaks of unprecedented attacks on press freedom in the country, and they highlight the following dimensions of those attacks. A legislative dimension, curtailing and criminalizing investigative journalism, including through resort to anti-terror legislation, the arrest, prosecution and imprisonment of journalists, denial of official accreditation, firing of journalists who are critical of the government, detention and assault of journalists covering the conflict in the Kurdish part of the country, takeover of media groups, we've already heard about it, basically more or less the disappearance of media diversity in Turkey, because ownership is now heavily dominated by media which could be characterized as pro-government. So that's for the overall description of what's happening to the press. And I think what we need to remember, as Karen just highlighted, it's not just about the press. I think what is happening in Turkey is about dissent. It's about political opposition and political dissent. So it's targeting any institution, formal or informal, that is a watchdog and that is providing alternative viewpoints to that of the government. So the academic sector has been targeted, universities which are actually very dependent on governments. There are a few private universities, but a lot of them are government universities, political parties, cultural and artistic centers, NGOs, and the legal sector as well, and I will return to that. So we've already been quite well briefed about the takeover of the media groups and what it means for journalism in general and the media sector in Turkey in particular. The imprisonment of journalists, Turkey a few years back was the worst jailers of journalists, and then there was maybe 1 or 2 years of respite where suddenly quite a few of them were released. Unfortunately, I think it happened in 2013, 2012, 2013, and then right now journalists are back in jail. So according to several different sources, there are between 30 to 33 journalists currently imprisoned. Many of whom, I could not find the exact percentage, but I will imagine the vast majority are imprisoned on charges related to national security or state-based charges. The first hearing of the lawsuit against the Cumhuriyet newspaper editor-in-chief Can Dündar and his Ankara representative has taken place this week, and as you know, it has been postponed, but the decision was taken to hear it behind closed doors. So that is a very bad news for them and for justice and press freedom in particular as well. I wanted to highlight some of the attacks on freedom of expression online. The press being as targeted as it has been for 2 years now, people have shifted to the online world for independent sources of information or additional sources of information, as a result of which Twitter, Facebook, social media in general, online media have been targeted. Just to give you a couple of indicators, Turkey has the most egregious record of any country for requesting Twitter to pull content. Between January and June 2015, Turkish request based on court orders, Turkish request to Twitter to remove content based on court order were 408, and that constituted 90% of the total number of requests received by Twitter during that period. For the second 6 months of the year, the removal based on court order increased to 450, so 50 more court orders. From July to December 2015, there were close to 1,800 requests without court order for account removal or content removal, compared to 310 for the first 6 months of 2015. So the number of requests without court order almost has been multiplied by 6 from the first 6 months to the second 6 months of the year. And you find the same pattern with Facebook and with Google. I mean, different numbers, but the same attacks on social media is quite common. Many of those orders, they have not been broken down by where they originate from, but my contact in Turkey, and you may think the same, link the orders for content removal to the president, the prime minister, the mayor of Ankara, and a few other political figures higher up in the government, or some of the family members of the president. So it's it's a small circle that is basically responsible for 90% of all Twitter account removal globally, which is quite unbelievable.